Hello, good morning, and welcome to Ensemble Conversations with me, Mark Kilmurry. Theatre director Lee Lewis was recently appointed Artistic Director of the Queensland Theatre Company after nearly 7 years as Artistic Director of the Griffin Theatre Company. I'm very happy that Lee joins us this morning for a chat. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Mark.
How are you?
Oh, like everyone, working day by day to try and get theatre back on stage.
Yeah.
So it's been a crazy time for you as well.
Indeed. How's isolation treating you? I ask that of every guest. I'm very interested in all the answers that are coming back.
Well, I haven't actually been very isolated. I live quite close to the theatre, and the theatre workshop has stayed open and costume has stayed open to be building shows that we're hoping to do next year. So we're just at the point where the whole office is back in. I look that way because that's where they are. So we've got the whole office back and working, and we're hoping to have a season launch and shows coming up. So it feels like we're getting back on track. It's been probably the first time in my life I've never had shows to go to at night. So on a personal level, it's been quite a revelation to kind of wonder how people do spend nights when they're not rushing to the theatre and processing extraordinary works of performance. So as a personal learning time, it's been quite fascinating, but it has been quite busy.
It has been. I sort of felt it sort of had that enforced break, and even it's a terrible, devastating pandemic. But at least I had a few evenings to myself, and I quite enjoyed that, being with the family. And also when we were isolated for the first time, and my son's at home, and we're all working at home, it was quite nice to go for walks and have lunch together and have breaks together. And you don't get that time. It was amazing, sort of what you can do and what you miss when we're all so frantic.
Well, it's true. I mean, the layers of communication with family, time to think about things. I've read some books. Well, that was a little while ago. That was in the first lockdown. No, it has been an interesting thing to think about what I don't do normally.
And so,
and that nighttime space, which for me is usually so filled. I mean, I have nights off, obviously, but usually they're quite guilty because I'm avoiding going to see something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, indeed. Yes. Well, we can spend the whole year out seeing shows, and also, like you, going to the theatre isn't necessarily we go for pleasure, but it's also work. You're going usually to see an actor or see a director or meet the theatre company, so you're sort of constantly working.
Oh, it is a working space for me, that nighttime space, but it's been really fascinating to come to Brisbane and to not get to know all of the artists through their work. I've met them, we've talked about work, but normally for me, you only really meet an artist when you see them in the thing that they do, which is working on stage. And that's where you get to really understand who they are and how they like to work and where their strengths are. So I've been in a little bit of a holding pattern insofar as understanding the artistic community of Brisbane. And also, of course, the audience. I haven't been sitting in audiences with Brisbane people, seeing how they react to things, what they love. So it's been an interesting introduction to the city, but I am looking forward to sitting with people and sharing stories again to really get to know them.
Yes. So you get a brand new job, you're planning a new season, and then this happens. And what happens to your seasons? You have 3. You have Billy Brown, Playhouse, Cremorne Theatre. What do you do? How do you plan next year without this year?
Look, well, I think like everybody, everything got thrown out, and then we've tried desperately to hold on to some ideas, some stories and some plays, and we've really been navigating how we understand going back into the theatres. Where Queensland Government has been very clear that we shouldn't be planning for any audiences greater than 50% throughout all of next year. So that's halved our capacity. So that means it's shifted the type of work we can make, what we can afford to do, how we work, and of course trying to make works that you can safely do with artists as well. Not so much of the kissing. I'm thinking.
Yes. Well, the same. That's right. For us, it's 220 seats becomes hopefully it becomes 101 seats. So that's something we're looking at planning too, because you say half your capacity and half your, we rely so heavily on box office, we have to consider what that means. But like you, we're desperate to get those plays back on. And you program a play in a season, presumably because you really love that play and you really want it to be seen by an audience. Now, Lee,
but also you program thinking that you found the right time for that play.
Yes.
So it's not just generally we'd like to do it, but I'd like to do that play in this time in the year for these reasons.
And keeping then that creative team on board too is the other juggle with the actors, that suddenly there's a clash because all the theatres are going at the same time. You got the perfect cast, yes. Perfect director, and suddenly that's...
And look, I know that there are often changes. Often we lose cast members to TV and film productions. People for various family reasons or health reasons can't do a show. And we're used to that as being from time to time speed bumps, if you like.
Yes.
But losing everything and throwing everything up in the air, that's been a challenge to think so differently.
Yes.
And also a chance to ask questions about our own work processes when we are locking so many things in so far in advance. What does that do to the way we react to audience and time? So it's brought up a whole lot of questions, and there have been some very interesting questions globally about how we make work and how we survive. How is it really sustainable what we do? I think it's been interesting watching how many companies, we talk about subsidized companies here because there is government support, but how many companies are essentially commercial companies now, much like yours, where you rely so heavily on box office, like commercial producers, and the way commercial producers are able to go out and say, no, we can't. Until we've got full houses, we cannot open. But friends, who've been working on Broadway shows for a number of years, and their producers have said, don't expect to hear from us before September next year.
Yes, that's right.
Because they don't anticipate full houses until then. And so what that will mean in the scheme of the globe for storytelling and for audiences and artists, and that community experience of coming together around a story, the impact is going to be so far-reaching in ways that we cannot anticipate.
No, that's right. It's going to be a very interesting future. Opening the doors is something that we want to do as soon as we can, but it needs to be right and it needs to be safe too, also for audiences coming in and actors.
So that we can actually enjoy the experience and not be afraid in that space. That cradle that the theatre seat is, you sit in that and you trust the artists to take you completely away from that space. And you can only really go on that imaginative journey if your body is relaxed and feeling like it can do that it doesn't have to be afraid.
Yeah.
So, it was really interesting. There are a couple of shows that I'd been hoping to do next year here at the Bill Brown, and they were really dependent on the actors being able to climb around among the audience and, get an audience member out on stage and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I go, and without that capacity, theoretically we could do the show, but I didn't want to go to those artists and say, you can't do the show that I know is so beautiful. Yeah. So I'm sort of pushing that back into the 2022 possibility. And then I kind of go, but we really won't know how we can go back to what we consider a normal theatre relationship and what people will be like at that point.
And like us, you would be planning years in advance. So suddenly we find we have too many plays for once, for a season for next year. There are plays that are falling over each other.
Mm-hmm. Far too many things that need a space, and there's a traffic jam. There's a big traffic jam of great work, which when we can get up and going again will be great.
Yeah.
But yes, it's staying open to the new works that people are writing now and making sure that they can find a space on stage in time, in the time they're written in.
Yes.
There's so many things I want to do, and I just to not get to do it, it's killing me.
I know. Just the other day I felt it's like a holding pattern, like you say. You're trying to land in the plane, and you just keep going around and around the airport, and hopefully we'll land at some point and be able to do what we need to do, and get on and do it. Lee, you studied at Columbia University. I was really interested that you studied actually as an actor before you went into directing. Was performing a passion of yours from an early age?
Oh yes. From 3 years old, I found my way on stage and decided I was going to live my life in that space. And I mean that I was 3 and I was a bluebell in a dance concert.
Right.
And I actually realized that I felt completely comfortable in the building, not just on the stage. And that I was conscious of that as well at that point. I loved every part of it, being in the building, being backstage and being on stage. And that's been the greatest stroke of luck I had, was finding that so early, because that's never changed. Every time I walk into a theatre, it's the place I feel most comfortable in the world. And I've worked as a lighting operator and a sound operator. I've hung lights, I've painted sets. I kind of just have always known I would spend my entire life inside theatres. And yeah, it grew from that. And I went on to, by the time I was 12, I was writing, directing, producing and performing in my plays. And I broke the news to my parents that I was always going to be in theatre, that the legal life that they'd foreseen for me, or the neurosurgery, was not going to be the path.
Right.
And I laid it all out. And I've been very fortunate in that everything I laid out at the age of 12 has happened.
Wow. That's fantastic. My mother was a writer. She wrote for the Two Ronnies and Dave Allen and British television. So, and she wrote plays, and then we did some amateur work. And I remember when I was about 20, putting props away and thinking, I actually think I want to do this now forever. And saying that to my mum, who then said, oh, what? No, you don't want to go into the theatre, because she knew it. She knew the world. But from there, that was it. And I went to drama school. And it's that moment, I think, where you have, this is what I want to do. I've always liked the idea of it, but you were much younger at 3 and at 12, and then putting on your own plays. So that's there you go. That's your career. And as you say, it's fantastic to know then, because I went through all those other jobs that I thought I would be able to do and failed.
No, it has been a magical life with the theatre, and I'm interested that at age 12, I did say I'll start as an actor because I can see a path there, but I don't think I'll always stay an actor. And that's exactly what happened. I went to drama school, I went to Columbia, and I worked on off-Broadway and Broadway shows for about 10 years. And in that course of that time, I started becoming the outside eye for a group of actors that I'd worked with at Columbia, and that was starting. And then when I moved back to Australia, there wasn't actually that much work as an actor. I was used to working very full time, and rehearsing in the days and then performing at night, so I just put my hand up really to direct. Someone had dropped out of a production. I was working in a small company, a little amateur company in Sydney, and someone who was directing pulled out, and I just went, well, I'll do that. There was a little bit of, I suppose, arrogance and sheer bravado at that point, yes. To think that I could, and then just to bluff my way into it. And the reason I say it was a production of The Tempest, so it wasn't small.
Oh,
and so that was probably the first thing where I was directing where I didn't know the people, and that's a very different ball game.
Yes.
As opposed to directing friends and working with friends and being that outside eye space. I could do the job, but I hadn't done it for people I didn't know, and that was a huge leap, petrifying, but it worked out okay. And so I went to NIDA the next year and did the directing course and did my master's in directing, and just didn't stop from there. And it was this really funny thing where, in stepping full-time into that director place, everything fell into place for me. It felt like the right place.
You didn't have a longing still to perform? Was that it? I am a director now.
No, and my dad did ask me after a few years, do you think you'll ever act again? And I just went, actually, Dad, I think I am actually a director. And I don't think that as an actor, I was working for very specific types of directors, for very passionate and wonderful directors. And I was giving over, I was very used to giving over my entire process to them. When you work with Anne Bogart and Andre Serban and Julie Taymor, they have vision and you give over to their vision. And I suppose what I found in stepping into the director role is that I could actually realize my vision and communicate to the world in that way. I don't know, I think there was a type of work that I used to do as an actor that, and I find myself that immersion in an idea is what I do as a director. So I think it's the immersion in that imagined space that I love so much, regardless of what it is, what role I play in that. So, but no, look, staying as an actor, you the way you've got to keep your body and your voice and your expressive capacity so open to the world and so strong. I sit a lot and I bury my head in things, and I've lost that capacity to transmit with dexterously, which actors have to maintain. So there's no going back at this point.
No.
Although it was funny, a couple of years ago, I went back to America and I met up with Andre, who was one of my teachers at Columbia when I was an actor. And I had to confess to him, I had never told him that I'd stopped acting. I said, hi, Andre, I'm not really an actor anymore. I'm kind of a director. He went, and it was really funny because he looked at me and he went, oh, yes, of course.
Right.
And it was kind of like going, he kind of went he just said that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good.
And it was kind of good as opposed to, oh, God. Really?
What are you doing?
It was quite a petrifying moment. Yeah, what are you doing? He did think I was crazy to be doing new works because he does adaptations of classics. And he said, why would you do that? He said, writers, they're so hard to work with. I'm like, yeah, that's why you like the dead ones, Andre, I know. That was a lot of fun.
Well, new work for you, that's something that you have specialised in, and obviously with the Griffin Theatre Company as artistic director there, you would lots and lots of wonderful new work. I think it's something that you love, isn't it? A new work, a new play?
It is. Over the years, I've actually become quite addicted to the process. I liken it to extreme sports. It is, making a play and getting to make a play on a professional stage is always, it feels like the Olympics. But new play making is extreme sports. I am in a wingsuit jumping off a mountain and you just don't know if you're going to survive the process. And the adrenaline that you get with new plays is extreme. You would know it, when you put that new work up in front of its first preview audience, you just don't know if it's going to work until that moment. No. And you feel that audience energy, the risk that you're taking at that point, that the audience is taking. They don't know anything about it. They haven't heard anything apart from that little bit of marketing. They don't know how their night's going to turn out. No, they haven't had a friend telling them it's going to be a great night in the theatre. And I love that impact that has, that first time on the planet where you're seeing if that story can work. I love doing classics. I had a lovely experience making Hay Fever down at Melbourne Theatre Company. It was gorgeous because it was full period, the full staircase, the beautiful frocks, the whole thing, and it was wonderful, and the audience loved it, and we had Marina Pryor singing it. What's not to love? Fantastic. So it was great, but it was like driving a Rolls Royce is what it felt like. The ride was so comfortable because the play is so sure of itself and the actors are sure in it and the audience is sure of it, and we all rode around in this really expensive car, as opposed to, seriously, new play making is like billy cart racing. You're just not sure if all the wheels are going to stay on. But if you manage to cross the finish line, as long as you've still got three wheels, you're good.
You've done your job.
You've done your job.
What I like too about your work, Lee, is that with new work, I know it's a Lee Lewis production because of the skill involved, but I wouldn't say there's a director on show. What you do, I think, is you get out of the way and serve the playwright, and make the playwright's work, although very skillfully done because it's your job to do that, but you don't get in the way.
It's funny you say that. I actually, if people talk about the directing in a new play, I always feel
You failed.
Not done a good job yet. If it's right. Visible, they should be talking about the play, not what I've done with it. And it's interesting for me. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes you actually, like, the play is asking for a big production where there's a very visible path through it, and a mechanism for doing that isn't on the page. But it should be about the play, and I do like to disappear inside it. I feel vaguely embarrassed if people start talking about the directing. The play should be front and centre, and I like stylistically disappearing into the different demands of different plays. I like not being pinned by a particular style of work.
One that stands out, which is sort of slightly opposite of the idea, but the Bleeding Tree, which when I went to the Griffin and there were actors almost walking near, touching the ceiling, and I still can't work out how you did it. That was an amazing production around an amazing script.
It was an amazing script from Angus, an amazing voice inside that was trying to speak. As a writer, when you look at the words on the page, he gives very little indication as to how to do the play. So it does ask a director to create a world it can stand up in.
Yes.
And look, that was an extraordinary challenge that he put out to me, and I put out to the cast.
Hi, we're back. We just had a slight technical glitch, so all of Lee's background's disappeared, sort of Doctor Who type feel now, into a completely different space. We're back though, thank you, Lee. You just had to change building. That was a very good jog that you just had in between questions. Lee, we're just talking about the Bleeding Tree, and it was going to go on to a question that I was going to ask you. Is it what attracts you in a play? What do you look for when you first read a play?
It's a little bit like falling in love for me. There's a mysterious moment when I go from thinking, could I do this, to I have to do this. Sure. And I never know when that's going to happen. It could be a particular moment in the play where the playwright has said something I've never heard before. I think I am looking for pieces of philosophy from our playwright creators, things that we can offer to an audience, or to me as a first audience. Ideas that I couldn't think of myself, or that they put in a way that allows me to process the world in a better way. I don't know. It is slightly mysterious. Sometimes there are things where I go, there's a pragmatics, where I go, I have to figure out a way to do this play. So that's a slightly different process, where I go, can I do this? And if I can see the thing and I know that it's important to do, then I will do it. So sometimes it's not love, it's necessity.
Yes, indeed. But and the relationship with the playwright is very important, particularly with new work, because it's the two of you going into this project so closely together.
Yeah, look, it's interesting for me. I haven't worked with a large number of playwrights again, and probably because working at Griffin, I thought it was important in that new workspace for the opportunity to be offered to a lot of different writers rather than a small group of writers repeatedly. Different artistic directors will make different decisions about that. But what it's given me is like an experience in working with a whole lot of different writers, and there is no one writer who is the same in their process. So that's interesting to me. And I try to have the relationship with the play, not the playwright, so that it's not a personal relationship with the playwright that I'm building on the stage, but more my primary relationship is with the story that the playwright is trying to tell.
Yes.
I've been conscious of making sure that I don't just do plays with people that I like.
Yes, so yes, casting widely and wide range of different playwrights too. We shared the last of the David Williamson plays before his retirement, Family Values and Crunch Time. Completely different plays, and his range is quite extraordinary, I think. It was quite a finish for David Williamson, I think.
Well, because of course he also had Emerald City on up here in Queensland,
Yes.
and that was going to go to Melbourne, and it didn't make it through its Melbourne run. So he was kind of he was sort of there at the beginning of Australian theatre, professional theatre as we know it, and he's sort of the playwright who was most on stage at the moment when there was an end to it.
Yes.
You know, because he had three shows shut down.
That's right. Yes.
Yes. So it sort of located the trauma all in the body of one playwright, I think. No, I know that the trauma's been there for the other writers as well, but that was quite an extraordinary moment in history, him having 3 on to begin with and declaring that to be his retirement gesture.
Very
but
dramatic.
To lose them all.
Yeah, it was
lose them all.
Dramatic way to go out. Yeah. Couldn't have planned it. The future of theatre post-COVID, will it change, do you think? Are we going to look at it in a different way?
I think there will be people who've identified that it sits in a place for them beyond entertainment, that they have a need to be in a room and share story with people. I think that's... And I think some people will go, you know what, I don't need it. And then it's our job to prove to them why they do. So... I think we will be working with a little bit of, I would call it couch inertia. This is the first time in my life where I've had a couch and a television and nights free.
Yes.
So I kind of understand what the pull of the couch is now. And I go, no, it's my job as a theatre maker to make something so urgent, so exciting that you have to get up off the couch and come to the theatre. So I think there's that. But look, I think the resources that we have to make theatre will be severely compromised for my foreseeable future being the next 10 years. Both how much money people will have to spend in that storytelling space, how much money the government will have to put towards the arts, and how we look at how we make work. I think we're going to be looking at very different ways of creating in the next 10 years because of reduced resource. I'm not worried about theatre. I mean, theatre as an impulse has survived everything. We've been through plagues before and come back.
Yes.
So I'm sort of not worried about theatre. I do worry about the theatres that we've worked so hard to build over the last 50 years. How those companies of people with very specific skill sets, how they will survive. Whether the institutions will make it through this time, I don't know, the bigger institutions, or whether they've been built in too clumsy a way to survive flexibly enough, something like this. You know, that dependence on, whether it's too much dependence on government funding to subsidise the exercise, or whether it's not enough other support other than box office for the enterprise of a company. I think all the weaknesses of our industry across the board, from the commercial through to the super subsidised, have been revealed. And I think anyone who's sitting in the chair running a company at the moment will be looking seriously at what those future sustainability questions are, and that will impact on the type of work we make and the way we make it. So I think it's fascinating. There's a part of my brain, the problem solve part of my brain, that I love. My theatre spirit is not worried at all, because artists will respond, they will start to create work that is fit for this time. And so young artists, I think, I'm not worried about at all. But I worry about a layer of our industry that have built their careers and that might decide that they don't want to go back to the beginning of making a play in their garage, that they can't afford to do that. I've been devastated to hear, the challenges someone like Michael Cassel is facing, where he's got Harry Potter up in the air. He's got a whole cast, surviving on JobKeeper, and what happens when that goes. So I think there are short-term, very huge questions, medium-term, big management questions, and then long-term, we're good.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Last time there was a plague, somebody wrote some sonnets because they had nothing to do. So all the good comes out of it. But I completely agree with you, particularly smaller companies, and also, of course, the larger companies where they're in that holding pattern. Lee,
Well, look, it's interesting being in one of those big companies now. The job of the company that's been built over the last 50 years is to deliver to an audience high-end theatre experience of scale, and that's just expensive.
Yep.
It's expensive to do well and safely, and that's what the companies have been built to do. So how we continue to provide that service to society, how we do that, is a big challenge.
It is. We're also finding that when you saying you're going to launch, when you can launch, and when can you launch, as well as having the next play ready when you've launched. So that's that's going to be the big juggle in the next few months, I think.
Oh, and yeah, for audiences to we're launching seasons, sure, but I'll be interested to know how the audience feels about buying a subscription for a year.
Yeah.
Whether they will or whether they'll go, I'm just going to see how we go.
Yeah.
I could absolutely understand that. So I think whether it pushes us back much more into single play producing rather than we'll put out a whole year, which places like the Donmar and the Almeida do very successfully. So So it's possible. It's just not how we've set ourselves up to work in Australia. So again, a lot of questions, but what has been really beautiful is the community of theatre creators and makers coming together across Skype and Zoom and every other form of connection to try and figure it out all together. So it feels like the strength of the community is greater for all the difficulties we're facing. Yes, indeed. And it's nice to have those conversations with our other artistic directors and other companies, and you think, well, we should do this anyway, whether there's a crisis or not, or a virus, let's do it. Oh, yeah, and not only that, around the world. Yeah. I'm having the same conversations with artistic directors around the world, and it's probably the first time on the planet that every theatre company has been in the same challenge. The same place, yeah. So we're actually able to talk across scale because there's no difference in problem between the smallest and the biggest theatres insofar as the safe management of work for artists and audience. And the challenges are the same, whether you're, talking to the National in London or to ART in Boston or, across America. You go, I'm actually able to talk to you on a completely level playing field. And the relationships that are starting to evolve out of that are kind of extraordinary. Yes, absolutely. It'll be interesting in a year's time if we talk again where we'll be and what will be happening around us. Hopefully we'll be too busy to talk. That would be quite nice. Look, hopefully we will, but let's make a date for the 27th of August 2021. You're on. Talk about where we're at and what's happened. We can replay a little bit of my ridiculous optimism, and we can laugh at me, or we can give me a big tick. Yeah, that's right. Okay, you're on. We'll do it. We'll set a date now with Damn Good here where we're filming. We'll do this in a year's time. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Lee. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you as always. All the best with the next few months with all the juggling going on, and I hope all the best for the QTC and for your wonderful work too. Thank you so much for talking to us. Thank you so much, Mark, and best of luck with your beautiful theatre and your beautiful audience. You too, and enjoy your jog back to the office. Okay, thanks. Bye. Thanks, Lee. See you. Bye-bye. That was wonderful, Lee Lewis. Thank you for watching this morning, and thank you for all your emails and all your feedback. Next week we'll have another wonderful guest for you. Keep the emails coming in. Thank you again for your support of the Ensemble Theatre. See you soon. Bye-bye.